Cat Days by Griffin Rose on AO3. Episode 26, Chapter 4. Hey, brother. Shouta shook him awake hours later. Hey, if you're going to school, you need to get up now. He was already dressed, and Izuku smelled fresh coffee on him. Izuku pushed himself up without thinking about it, ignoring the pounding in his head. I'm up. Shouta ruffled his hair. You sure you're up for classes? I'll be fine. Izuku automatically responded, rubbing the grit out of his eyes. He was still tired even after that sleep. All right, Hisashi made breakfast. Nodding, Izuku shifted out of bed and into the kitchen. He winced at the kitchen light, throwing a hand up to shade his eyes. Miso soup and a rolled omelet waited for him on the table. Normally there would be music playing. Hisashi couldn't stand silence. Plus, he just really loved music. Today, the kitchen was quiet, and Izuku almost told Hisashi to put the radio on. Except his head did hurt, and it wasn't going away now that he was up. Morning, Zuko. Hisashi waved from the sink, cleaning up a few things. How are you feeling? The immediate reaction was a glare. He was tired, and he didn't have the energy to deal with conversation and people. Oh God, he had only been up for 2 minutes. Could he have really made it through an entire school day? Izuku? Hisashi asked. Nope. No, he was not putting up with that all day. I'm going to bed. Their muffled laughter followed him to his room. He closed the door without comment on it and flopped onto his bed. Shouta wasn't all surprised when Izuku took one look at Hisashi's obnoxious morning personality and decided today was not worth it. Hisashi was slightly offended, especially because he had been toning it down for once, which just made Shouta laugh more. Grumbling, Hisashi put Izuku's breakfast in the fridge for later. Shouta pulled out some painkillers and got a shot of water before creeping into Izuku's room. The kid hadn't fallen back asleep yet, but he had burrowed under all his blankets and stuffed animals. Only his fluffy green hair was visible. Shouta put his painkillers and water on the nightstand, and then he sat on the edge of the bed and tried to find Izuku's shoulder. Izu? I just wanted to check real fast, okay? Then you could sleep. The lump of bedding shifted, and a stuffy All Might fell aside to show Izuku peering at him. Still have a headache? Yeah. There's some ibuprofen and water here for you. It'll help. Izuku's eyes slid to the nightstand and he hummed. Do you want to see if Recovery Girl can do anything? Shouta offered. No, I'm just gonna sleep it off. Alright, if you change your mind, just let me know. I'll be checking in between classes. This was normally when Izuku stayed home from school. True, he'd be napping most of the day, but this wasn't the kind of thing that would knock Izuku out for hours. As long as he texted back before the class break, Shouta could check his phone. He wouldn't panic. And even if he didn't text before that break, Shouta wouldn't act on his panic until the second one. Even then, he'd call before doing anything else. Can you check on Shinso? Izuku asked. He probably feels really bad. Yeah, I'll check on him. Shouta agreed. Need anything before I go? Izuku thought about it for a moment and shook his head. Alright, get some rest. Nodding, Izuku reached over for the pills, and then snuggled into his blankets again. Shouta kept the door open so the cats could get in. He wasn't too worried about leaving Izuku home alone. Even if he stayed, Izuku was just going to sleep all day. Maybe do homework he hadn't gotten to do? It would be illogical for Shouta to stay home with him for something so minor. But that was his kid. His kid was hurting. And no matter how minor, Shouta was gonna worry. Hisashi had to drag him to UA and constantly tell him that everything would be fine. If nothing else, he needed to talk to Shinso and Todoroki. They had been freaking out. If Shouta stayed home as well, they'd absolutely lose it. So he focused himself to go to UA. He didn't have a chance to catch Shinso before classes, barely making it to his own homeroom on time. Todoroki noticed him come in alone, eyes cutting over to Izuku's empty desk, and then back to Shouta in clear panic. He wasn't the only one who noticed Izuku's absence. and a few students were asking where he was. "Settle down," Shouta stated in his usual deadpan. "Midoriya's taking the day off. You don't need to concern yourself about it." He made eye contact with Todoroki as he said it, hopefully putting the boy at ease. Todoroki frowned, one hand disappearing under the desk, and, not so subtly, reaching for his phone. Shouta led him and continued with his announcements. If Todoroki didn't want to pay attention, that was his own choice. Later, he was accosted on his way to lunch by Shinso. He held up a hand before Shinso could even get out a word. "Izuku is fine. He still has a little bit of a headache and wasn't up for classes." "He said he was fine," Shinso murmured, crossing his arms. "It's just a headache. It's not the end of the world," Shouta said. It was easy to say that now, but if the last time he'd seen Izuku was when he'd been screaming bloody murder, it wouldn't be easy to convince either. Shinso's mouth twisted, and he looked out the window. You're still..." Shouta waited for him. He noticed Shinso had trouble asking questions sometimes. He could guess why, of course, but other than giving Shinso the time and space to ask, he hadn't figured out the best way to address it. Judging by how Shinso twisted his mouth again and frowned at the floor, that probably wouldn't be enough this time. "You can ask me anything," he prompted, as gently as he could. "Tomorrow," Shinso said. "We're still..." "Ah." Shouta reached out to ruffle Shinso's hair. "Yes, we're still training tomorrow. I'm not mad at you about what happened. Izuku should have told me that would happen, and it isn't your fault he reacts to your quirk that way." Shinso relaxed, considerably, and nodded. Shouta pushed past him towards lunch and continued to the staff room for his own lunch, checking in with Izuku along the way. Izuku sent him a picture of two of their cats sleeping on his face while he made a thumbs up next to them. He figured that would be the end of it, but Shinso and Todoroki found him after school as well and asked if they could head over to check on Izuku. "I know he's been texting you both all day," Shouta stated, raising a brow. "Just because he says he's fine over text doesn't mean he is." Todoroki insisted. He narrowed his eyes at the ground. "I can never tell what people really mean over text anyways." Right. Todoroki had all the social skills of a rock. He probably had a hard time reading people when they were in front of him. Something as static as a text message would be impossible. "We won't stay long," Shinso promised. He pointed to Todoroki. "He's got extra notes for Midoriya, too." Realistically, Shouta could have taken the notes home with him and passed them along, but both boys had been worried about Izuku as much as he had all day, and it would probably be another hour or two before Shouta could get home. If Izuku was up for it, this would set his own mind at ease as well. And if any of Shouta's students were going to check on Izuku, he preferred it to be these two. Both were relatively quiet and low energy. "Let me see how he's feeling." The boys brightened, though if you didn't know them, it would be hard to tell. For Todoroki, it was in the eyes, the way they widened ever so slightly and turned towards him while he stood a little straighter. Shinso put his hand in his pockets and leaned back, lips twitching in a smile. Izuku was only too happy to have the boys over, so Shouta sent them on their way. Todoroki had been over before, so he could guide Shinso. He smiled after them, wondering if he'd find all three napping on each other when he got home. By the time Todoroki and Shinso came over, Izuku was more than ready for people. The last of his headache was faded not long after lunch, and he'd spent the afternoon finishing his homework he neglected the night before. The two of them coming over was a welcome change. They barely made it past the door before the cats were on them. They liked Todoroki almost as much as they liked Izuku, pawing at his left side until he finally gave them attention. Shinso eyed them, and then looked at Izuku. "They're actual cats, right? You don't have any siblings?" Izuku sputtered. "What? No, of course not. They're real cats." Shinso nodded and reached out to scratch one on the head. They ended up in the living room, Shinso and Todoroki on the couch, with the cats, while Izuku sat at the coffee table and went to Todoroki's notes. He occasionally asked Todoroki's questions about the material, but for the most part, it was straightforward enough. It was a quiet afternoon, and Izuku was grateful to his friends. While he hated worrying them, it was nice to know they cared. Shouta and Hisashi came home with pizza for dinner. Todoroki, predictably, had never had it before, and tried it with some temptation. Shinso had it and loved it, and he devoured 3 pieces by himself with no problem, and shyly took a 4th when Shouta wordlessly put it on his plate. After dinner, Todoroki had to leave to make it home before Endeavor. Shinso hesitated a bit longer, and Izuku wanted to shove him back onto the couch and bury him in cats while demanding answers from him. Trust was a fickle thing, though, and while Izuku didn't think Shinso could get away so easily now that Shouta was practically training him for the hero course, he imagined Shinso could still find ways to avoid him if he wanted to. He didn't want to press too hard and push Shinso away. He still hesitated in the doorway, while Shinso put his shoes back on to head back home. "Hey, Shinso?" Izuku stated. Shinso grunted. "If you want to come over again whenever you need to," Izuku finally said, giving him the blanket invitation he had given Todoroki. "It doesn't matter what time it is, or why, just if you need to go somewhere, you could come here." Shinso paused, left shoe only half on, and looked up at Izuku. "What makes you think I need somewhere to go?" Izuku shrugged. "I'm guessing mostly you're really good at not talking about your home life. But when we met, I just had this feeling." Shinso eyed him for another minute. "I'm fine." Izuku let him have it. "Sure, but the offer is still there. Don't be afraid to come over, though, okay? Dad and Sashi have weird hours. Odd or one of us would be awake no matter what the time." "I'll keep that in mind," Shinso said quietly. Then, even quieter. "Thanks." "You're welcome," Izuku said. "And thanks for coming over today." Shinso made a hasty retreat after that. Not for the first time, Izuku wished he could do more. Todoroki had been so much easier. He'd approached Izuku, all but screaming for help. And while actually fixing things for Todoroki was far from easy, Izuku could at least be there to support him now. Whenever Shinso was going through, he was insisting on going through it alone. Well, not for much longer, if Izuku had anything to say about it. The next day, during lunch, Izuku scouted the cafeteria until he found Shinso, and then all but dragged him to his lunch table with Tenya, Todoroki, and his other friends from 1A. Shinso bawled at all the people. He knew some of them, of course, but half the class was at the table, and that was intimidating for any new person. "They don't bite, I promise," Izuku said, pushing him into the seat next to Todoroki. "And you'll be in class one day, so you might as well start getting to know them now." "Oh, you're transferring into our class?" Uraraka asked. Shinso rode the back of his neck. "Not officially. I want to, and Aizawa-sensei's helping, but..." He trailed off and shrugged. "That's exciting. Can we do anything to help?" Uraraka asked. Shinso physically leaned back, in surprise at her easy and honest generosity. Asu put a finger to her cheek. "We can do homework together to keep you up to date with our class hero work." "You'll need to volunteer to train his quirk with you too," Todoroki said, innocently sipping at his water, "since Midoriya is banned from ever doing that again." Izuku couldn't even offer a defense against that. Yeah, I'm banned." "So banned," Shinso agreed. "Do I want to know what happened?" Tenya asked. Izuku sighed and propped his chin on his hand. "Because of my quirk, I have a bit of a natural defense to Shinso's, but it comes to the price of a major migraine, if I push it too far. That's why I wasn't here yesterday." "You call that a major migraine?" Shinso cut in. "We thought you were dying," Todoroki added indulgently. It brought looks of horror to everyone else's faces, so they had to explain the whole day, and Izuku had to go into detail about some of the effects his own quirk had on him, which only raised more questions. "Is that why you used to lick your hand and rub your face?" Suyu asked. "You did it all the time in school." Izuku's bright red tried to sink into his seat. "Yeah, if I spent too long as an animal, some of the habits carry over. That's one of them." "That's adorable," Uraraka stated. You should have seen him chase a laser pointer. Tenya, Izuku's now ex-best friend, mentioned with a grin. Izuku groaned and buried his face in his hands. Why would you bring that up? Wait, important question. Shinso asked. As a human or as a cat? Izuku peered through his fingers to glare at Shinso. A human, Tenya said. Izuku kicked him under the table. I'm gonna start telling them all your embarrassing stories. I've done nothing I'm ashamed of, Tenya said. Not even that time in the park when you got so excited for ice cream truck you activated your quirk and smashed into the side of it? Color bloomed on Tenya's cheeks. He coughed. Well, accidents happen. Izuku raised a brow. If Tenya wanted to play this game, Izuku had plenty more to offer. Uraraka grinned, eyes starting between the two, and eagerly awaited Izuku's next story. There was also the time you were running, slipped in a puddle, and ended up in a garbage can. Honestly, half of Tenya's life had been tripping over stuff while he figured out how to get his quirk under control, and kept up with that kind of speed. Izuku could list the different mishaps and crashes for days. The best one, though, wasn't when he'd been running. Like I said, accidents happen, Tenya said. The pink on his cheeks were starting to darken. Are you gonna make me bring up the sleepover? Izuku challenged. The blush spread over Tenya's nose. Don't you dare! Wait, what happened at the sleepover? Uraraka asked. Izuku? Tenya warned. I thought you had nothing to be ashamed of. Izuku teased. I'm not ashamed. I would just prefer if they didn't know about that. Midoriya, you have to tell us now, Uraraka said. Do not, Tenya said. Izuku, please. My reputation as class president depends on it. Uraraka just about died at that. Tenya made it sound like it was so much worse than it was, and his reputation would probably be fine. Izuku would bet all of them had embarrassing stories from childhood while trying to learn to use their quirk. They'll understand. But if it meant this much to Tenya, he'll save the story for later. He might need the blackmail for something stronger later on. All right, but no more stories about me. Deal. Tenya agreed. Aw, come on, Uraraka complained. Have to say, I'm disappointed too. Shinso agreed. Izuku shrugged. I can't waste potential blackmail material like that. Tenya spartered and went on proper hero conduct while the others laughed. Shinso fit right in with them, and he'd often join them at lunch after that. Izuku still had to physically invite him, but he came much more willingly. Sometimes he said no, he wanted to eat with his classmates that day, or couldn't handle people right then, and Izuku let him. Building trust was slow, but Izuku needed Shinso to know he could trust them, and that meant they had to do this at Shinso's pace. That's what kept Izuku reminding himself on any time Shinso turned down his lunch invite, or any time after school when he didn't want to hang out. They seemed to have time, at least. Whatever was wrong with Shinso's home life, it didn't seem to be physical at all. All right. Okay, how's everyone's feeling? Building trust, we love it. Trust building, woo! Icebreakers, everybody, icebreakers. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bum, 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 ba-dum, bum, 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 ba-dum, bum, bum. Why did I say 1, 2, 3, 4 like I'm some fucking white person? I'm not white. Lo prometo. No soy gringa. I was about to say, no soy blanca. Oh my god, wait, hold up. I have an aunt named Blanca. Well, her name isn't Blanca, but her last name is Blanca. I think it's her last name. I actually don't know. We all just call her Tia Blanca. For all I know, it could just be the fact that she's really pale and has been a nickname, and I thought it was her name. Oh my fucking god, what is her actual name? Is it not Blanca? Shit. Is it like when people call my mom Niña? Or Echo Bro Gordo? Shit. Is her name not Blanca? I'm gonna go insane. Okay, moving on. This was a cute chapter. I also love the sharing of the embarrassing stories. I have nothing that I am embarrassed about. Actually, no, I have a lot, but Shh. No one needs to know that. The only person who knows that stuff is my parents and my bestie. My bestie will never say anything. I do not trust my parents not to say shit. Okay. As always, my rain drops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.